everybody, I'm John McFarlane, Head of Creator Engagement, and welcome to episode 4 of the absolutely on time and always regular Sea of Thieves official podcast. We've got a couple of fresh victims this week who I don't think have been on a Sea of Thieves podcast before. At least one of you hasn't been on a Sea of Thieves. Adam, you might have. But of course, we've got the regular motley crew who will go through here. We've got Christina McGrath, who's Head of Community Engagement. Hello, Christina.
Hiya.
I get Mike Chapman, Creative Director. Hey, Mike.
Hello, everyone.
I've got Neate, Executive Producer.
Everyone.
And the two new guests for this week is Xander Ashwell, Director of Accessibility and UX.
Hello.
And Adam Park, Head of Brand and Licensing.
Hey up.
So just before we get started, I want to let people know if you are just listening and you want to see all our smiling faces, you can go over to YouTube, Sea of Thieves on YouTube and watch us on there. Or if you are watching us and you want to listen to us on the go, then you can head over to any reputable podcast app and listen to us on there. And lastly, Christina will be taking some questions from the social that we have been looking over for the last couple of weeks. So if you do want your questions asked on the next podcast, then use the hashtag #SOTPodcast. Anyway, let's go with it. And how is everyone? We ask every time, but it's been such a big gap since the last one that I think we can recap what's been going on. Joe, you want to start?
I'm all right. Yeah. I'm I've got a leak in my house in the roof, which is pretty good. So I'm looking to get that fixed. It's very exciting. There's water literally running down the inside of my walls in my house. So
it's not a metaphor, is it? This is not a metaphor. This is an E3 season, is it?
No. No. This is literally like when I bought this house about 4 years ago, the survey was like, in about 5 years, you're going to need to replace the roof. And I was like, 5 years is ages. And now there's water running down the inside of my house. And so future Joe is quite angry at past Joe. So that's what's going on in my life at the moment. It's literally the most exciting thing that I've got on the top of my head.
But you're not in the house at the moment, right?
I'm not. No, I'm very dry out here. Yeah.
Too dry, if anything.
Well, yeah.
Chafing.
Indeed.
Christina, what's happening in your life?
Nothing.
Chafing, I hope no chafing.
No chafing.
No chafing.
Thankfully. Not too dry over here. All good. No, I know, having a midlife crisis, but that's nothing new. It's all good. Start playing the drums. You can see like the edge of a drum kit, maybe off camera here, which is quite nice. But it is very much midlife crisis.
Are you going to play us out at the end?
Very slowly and dreadfully. Who wants to hear All I Want for Christmas Is You? That is the only thing I can play.
Please. No, me. Me, please. Yes, please.
Hands down.
Season 5 front end music. Yeah. Over to you, Christina.
I'll be messaging Robin. Let me have a go. Be like, no, sorry, we're busy forever. Thank you.
Do it and Adam can sing over the top of it.
Why me?
Oh, you have a lovely set of lungs
voice
on
of an
you,
angel.
Adam.
You have a lovely, lovely voice. No, I really don't.
And with that, how you been, Adam?
Very well, thank you. I saw you the other week, John.
We did last week, yeah, for the first
time in
forever.
20 months or something.
Yeah. For the first time in forever.
And it was delightful. See?
Yeah. See?
There's our singer.
The singing, not if I'm singing like that. But it was delightful to catch up with you. You've been saying you've been moving house.
I have, which is why, as everyone's already joked, I look like a Tory MP with my bookshelves behind me.
Yeah, and it's nice and tidy. You've done a good job of
That's
getting in
only
there.
this bit. Like if I was to turn any other direction, hence this spot, it's just a mess. And there's this horrific lampshade above me, which the previous owners left, which is the worst thing ever.
And was that the previous owner behind you on the shelf?
Yeah, the hand. They didn't leave. I just took a fancy to the house. I was like, I'm in.
And you had bee infestation, a wasp infestation.
Wasp. Come on,
wasp.
Yes, a wasp nest. Yes, quite. We had I don't know if I've told anyone else this. It's not that interesting, but I went into the loft because I hadn't been up there and it was pitch black, and I had my phone, and you could just hear this hum, and I was like, "Is that a plane?" And we switched the lights on, and there was just wasps everywhere. And so we had the wasp man come round to get rid of it, and he got attacked by the wasps. They covered his face. He nearly fell down the hatch. He was just shouting, "Help me!" from the loft. I didn't dare go up. And the actual the wasp nest itself, I would say, was the size of like a mini. Like an old mini, not a new mini, but like an old mini. It was huge. Like you could sit in it. It was so big.
Wouldn't recommend that.
That's the trouble with older houses.
Amazing.
It's like you called him Wasp Man.
Wasp man.
Not the exterminator, just Wasp Man.
Yeah.
Became a Wasp Man.
Also, and Xander, have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. I just got back off holiday, so today has been a day of catching up on all the things that I missed. But yeah, I took the family down to the Jurassic Coast, which was lovely because we got to see ginormous ammonites kind of littered on the beach, and spent an inordinate amount of time trying to convince my children not to whack them with hammers and just to admire them, because everyone's there like trying to crack open rocks and find fossils, and the kids were like, "There's a big one here. Let's get it." And so I was kind of
Did you equip them with hammers, Xander?
Yeah. Someone down there on the coast making an absolute killing, selling $2.99 hammers from Screwfix for 15 quid a pop. So yeah, we got some little geologist hammers and had a little crack, and we found some lovely ones, which felt very felt like David Attenborough, or I don't know.
That's cool.
Maybe you could send Adam some for his shelves, and we can have them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I should
They look quite nice
have
up there.
equipped myself with some
gorgeous.
finds.
What about
You could put a
yourself,
hammer
Mike?
as well in the little hand, couldn't you? Like
Oh
behind
yeah,
you.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Do you want me to get the hand?
Bit of home decoration tips from.
I should put it just here in shot.
Have it holding the microphone.
Yes. See,
Mike,
should
how
have
you been?
suggested that.
Good. Yeah, really good. I feel like I've got nothing to add now. Like my house is watertight. I'm on the cusp. I think I'm on the cusp of a midlife crisis. Not in it yet, but I can feel it coming, so it doesn't count yet. Definitely no wasps. I went on a holiday recently. I went to Edinburgh for a couple of days. That was very nice. Living my best Harry Potter life. That was good.
Was that your first time there?
No, for a few years. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been there, but that was awesome place to hang out for a couple of days. And no, that's it. Just basking in the afterglow of season 4. It's good to get the Sunken Kingdom out and see people's feedback. And yeah, other than that, I'm good.
It's good to see that everyone's having such a nice time. So the first kind of usually we go through different subjects on this, and the first topics, I should say. The first topic we want to hit this time is accessibility, and that's why we've got Xander joining us today. I know we've been doing a bunch of work, especially in the latest update there. We dropped a bunch of accessibility options in there and have gone down really well within the community. And I know, Christina, I'm going to pass it over to you. I know you've got a couple of questions from Twitter and stuff I can see here.
Yeah, so we've always had a big investment in accessibility, but we've recently had quite a few kind of accessibility moments where we participated with the wider Xbox Disability Awareness Month work, and then also spotlighted it in Sea of Thieves news, which has definitely seen accessibility being discussed more on our channels. So I guess, Xander, for people new to the concept of accessibility, could you just give us like a really top line look at what is accessibility, and how does Sea of Thieves do what they do in terms of trying to make sure that as many people as possible can play?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. As many people as possible can play. Like that's kind of the aim, right? So accessibility is about essentially kind of joining the gap between someone's abilities or someone's capabilities and the expectations that the experience that we build has of a player. And that essentially is kind of ensuring that we're being as inclusive as we possibly can be. So what that means is that we look at the lived experience of a vast range of different people, and we try and ensure that the experiences that we provide them are accessible for them, and that's where the word accessibility comes from. And it's really worth us kind of bearing in mind that when we talk about accessibility, we don't necessarily just mean permanent disability. So we don't just mean someone that has low or no vision. Disability can be temporary, so you can have damaged your eye, or it can be situational that that the sun's streaming in through the window, or you're I don't know, you're playing late at night and you've had to turn the brightness right down on your TV. So there's a wide range of accessibility considerations that benefit everybody, and a big focus of ours is ensuring that we are intentionally including rather than unintentionally excluding. And so what we do at Rare, as part of wanting to make our games as accessible as possible, is we try and engage as many people within the studio and raise awareness of what accessibility considerations that we might have, rather than just me kind of banging the accessibility drum and running around trying to keep eyes on everything. If everyone at Rare has a great understanding of what we mean by accessibility and how they can help, then that puts us in a really good place, as you've mentioned recently with lots of our updates. But also we listen to a lot of people, within the community as well, and just all those lived experiences makes for a better end product, I guess.
That's cool. And that leads very nicely into the next question, which is how do we source kind of feedback regarding accessibility features or issues that we have? Like, what avenues do people have to explore?
Yeah, so we have a range of kind of means that we gain feedback. So obviously a massive one for us is insiders. We test stuff in insiders in a whole range of ways, whether that's for scalability and stability, whether that's for usability, or whether that's for accessibility. So we get a whole bunch of feedback there. We have Xbox's internal user research team who are really, really helpful in providing us with best practice examples, with analysis of other experiences. And then we have the Xbox Accessibility Insider League, which we haven't yet engaged with, although we're in the kind of early steps of planning out what that engagement looks like. And they're fantastic. I don't know if they've announced numbers, but there's a massive cohort of people who've self-identified as having some lived experience of accessibility requirements. And so if there are players, whether they're insiders or whether they're people that are playing Sea of Thieves kind of out in the wild, want to provide us with accessibility feedback, if they go to seaofthieves.com/accessibility, there's links there that mean that players can raise support tickets and request features or tweaks or suggestions to our experience and help us understand their experience of Sea of Thieves better.
That's ace. So I will fetch up one very specific accessibility question that we see come up quite a lot on channels. And I think there's probably a little bit of have a sneaky preview of where we might be going with this. I know that there's probably a few opinions on this, but one of the things that we see on the channels a lot, and this is a question from one of our community moderators and just like all round legends, Tamas, is do we have any plans to further the accessibility settings in-game to better deal with seasickness? We know that a lot of people feel seasick when they play our game.
Yeah, and that's a great question and super pertinent to a game like Sea of Thieves, right? And although I joined Rare like a little way into development, so I wasn't kind of at Rare in the very early days, I know that a lot of work went into understanding camera motion, trying to minimize seasickness as much as possible. It's a difficult challenge to solve, right? Because we've got a moving ocean, we've got a moving ship, we've got a first-person camera, and tying those things together in a way that feels real but doesn't kind of incur like the cost of motion sickness is a challenging problem to solve. I don't know if you want to chat a bit, Mike, about those.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely haven't made it easy for ourselves, and we spent so much time. Right. I mean, really, in the first 6 to 8 months of Sea of Thieves, in terms of the motion of the ship on the ocean, the shape of the waves, the randomness to it, following the direction of the wind. I mean, that sense of buoyancy of being on a fixed object in an open ocean was a big part of what we wanted to move over to when we moved to the Unreal Engine, is really getting that feel that we'd nailed in our prototype. So alongside that, while we were working on that, a certain proportion of people out there obviously get seasickness, and it comes in different degrees. And even as part of our own team, you start getting these double figures of people. You start seeing instances of people on the dev team that really struggled to play Sea of Thieves, sitting down to play a play test, and in some ways experiencing for the first time that they do have a problem with seasickness. They might never been on a real boat in like a really choppy ocean before. So we prototyped a series of solutions that I think when we look at it from an accessibility perspective, we will probably go and look at again, which are fairly simple things like looking at single points of reference. Like we had essentially like a tiny little dot in the center of the screen that was a fixed point of reference that when you look at it, actually calms those feelings of unease and seasickness, along with tweaks we can make to our camera. And some of those tweaks we did roll in for the launch of the game, but to go any further, it's something that we'd want to put on a toggle. So yeah, it's speaking of something that cuts to the heart of the experience we tried to create, it very much is seasickness, and it is a real issue. There's definitely still people on our own team that struggle with it whenever they do play the game. And as well as whenever we've taken the game to shows, we always see a small proportion of people that play the game really struggling with seasickness. So we definitely got a lot of leads we can go and investigate when we look at this from an accessibility perspective.
Absolutely. It's about player choice as well, right? Like things that work for some players absolutely don't work for other players, and giving players the ability to kind of self-certify and go, this is helpful for me, or this is a hindrance to me, and therefore I'm going to turn it off. Like the notion of kind of barriers in games is and difficulty is, this is a really good example where, we can make the game as straightforward to play as possible, but if there's this barrier for me as a player that gets motion sickness, then all of a sudden we've introduced something that means that I'm not going to have a great experience, and that's not ideal. So yeah, like it's absolutely something that I think we'd want to look at, and we'd want to ensure that was a choice that we were providing to players, rather than like, hey, everyone gets a fixed point on the horizon, or and we always have to balance these things as well, right, for the kind of parity of experience, to ensure that we are unlocking access rather than kind of skewing things too much for players in terms of the options that we provide them. So it's always a fine balance, but we're always very much open to kind of hearing players' experiences and kind of ideating around them. Yeah,
definitely a good point in terms of how we open up that experience rather than just changing the experience so it meets an accessibility needs. I think all of us on the team have just learned so much through the efforts of Xander and the team, and the conferences that you go to, staying up to date, liaising with the team that we have as part of Xbox. I think we've all learned so much about wider accessibility needs across Sea of Thieves. And I think every accessibility focus that we have is a unique case. And I think there's certainly areas where you are toggling something off, or you're providing a quick alternative, like high contrast mode, or pressing A to swim up just to help people with navigation. But there's so many other examples where it really asks us those questions, like principally, where do we stand on this? Like, it would be easy to turn off flares from weapons or from cannons, or changing how we render certain effects, but that's not really the answer, because you still want to convey the same experience to players that have that accessibility need, but do it in a different way. So I think the types of accessibility issues we're looking at now, and I'd actually roll seasickness into this, like how that's a great example in terms of spending so much time on the open ocean is a key part of our game. How do we open that up to more players? It's not just stopping the camera moving, it's how do we do that in a way that still delivers that core fantasy of being out there on a ship as a pirate in a pirate world. So it takes a great deal of care and iteration, and really reaching out to the people that are the experts in this field. And obviously, I'm sure you've learnt so much, Xander.
Absolutely, yeah, and not just the people who are kind of experts in the field in terms of implementing solutions to these challenges, but from people with that lived experience, right? Like that's the thing that I think one of the things that I always find super wholesome and heartening to see is, when special effects come into the studio and they talk to us about the work they're doing, and every time that happens, like 2 weeks later, like someone somewhere got super jazzed about a thing, has like squirreled away on a little passion project, and has solved a problem that they saw someone encounter, because just building that empathy and understanding through seeing someone else's lived experience and gaining a sense of, oh geez, like that isn't something that I'd even consider to be a challenge, and it's a challenge for you, and it doesn't need to be. It's just our decisions that have meant that that's a challenge. So yeah, learning from people with that lived experience is fantastic, because then we can solve some of those challenges for them, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we've had a very similar experience on social media channels in terms of like that journey to make our content resonate with everyone. And it's very much like the feedback is incredible when you get that feedback. It's like, I didn't get the joke because you use this sort of character too much. And so a screen reader just, it farted out, and I have no idea what the joke was. We are constantly trying to evolve how we do things with alt text, with making sure that we present stuff in an accessible format. We're trying to understand how we can present content in a way that's both engaging. So, Mike, as you say, you don't lose that immersion and that fantasy, and the joke always delivers to the extent that you want it to deliver. But also just making sure that more people can enjoy it or laugh at it. So we're going through a very kind of iterative process constantly, and the feedback is always super valuable, from all corners, but especially when people come to us and say, I didn't get this joke, but actually, and you broke my screen reader, or you made it go nuts. But what you could do in future is do X, Y, Z. And we just take that forward every single time. And there's Xbox resources, but obviously with social media, it's super immediate. They can give us that response. It means that next time, the week after, we deliver it in a different way, and hopefully more people get to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And, like whether it's community on social media, whether it's our own spaces on Sea of Thieves website or the forums or our customer support tools, like all of these things are player experience, or people who are engaged with Sea of Thieves in whatever way. That's part of their experience. So we want to make that as accessible. We want to be as inclusive as possible as we can be to people, no matter where they are.
So it's been good to see how passionate our team has got about this. Like recently, Topher and James with the compass narration, like the whole team gets super passionate about this, of getting these features in the game. And it's very much, it's an audience that may very well want to experience Sea of Thieves, and they're already sold on the magic of the game. They've just got this gate that's preventing them from playing it. So it's quite an easy thing to get passionate about in terms of opening the game up to more people. It's pretty cool, and the team's obviously learning a lot, but remain super passionate to do as much of this stuff as possible. It's great.
Yeah, it's really interesting from kind of my perspective as well, of it's the learning, right? All the time, you're always learning, and things that you just hadn't even considered. Like I think the one a week or two ago, I can't remember what conversation it was in, but it was around sharks, which kind of came up around just the fear of sharks. Some people have a fear of sharks, right? And so we obviously, the original intent was to kind of play into that, I guess, right? Because you're putting sharks into our world so that they're in the sea, they're scary, they're purposely designed to surprise you, and when they kind of attack and stuff, right? There's no like sound cue until they've kind of attacked you and stuff. But that can be something that actually is kind of the opposite of inclusion for some people, right? Because they just don't want to get into our game and jump into the sea because they know that's going to really fill them with fear. And so that's something that we'll then go talk about and consider and think of like what can we do on that front, right? And that I know that's a kind of conversation that's ongoing at the moment, but I just don't think I would have even thought of that. I know I had a friend who was scared of sharks, and it's like, oh, I can't play Sea of Thieves because of that, but I hadn't thought, oh, but there's a solve. There's potentially something we could do for that, right? So I just find it fascinating. There's just so many different things we can do.
Massively. And I think one of the the framings that really kind of open my eyes is this notion that accessibility, being the gap between your capability and the experience, can be temporary and can be situational. So if you're a new parent who's got a baby in one arm, then playing a game with one hand, like if we can help you do that, then you can play Sea of Thieves in that context. Or you want to have the sound right down because the baby's sleeping, well then all of a sudden you've got the same needs as someone that's got low or no hearing. And so taking that approach to kind of thinking about it suddenly makes it far more. I think there's a stat in the US that's like 21,000 people a year suffer the loss of an upper extremity. But when you extend that to people that break their arms, or to people who are situationally disabled, that's 21 million every year. And so all of a sudden it goes from a kind of a thing that's with unconscious bias, you think it's very niche. Not at all. It's quite the opposite. It's that everyone has a different context. I can be playing Sea of Thieves on xCloud on the bus, and my attention is not fully on the game because I need to work out when my next when I'm going to be getting off the bus. So that kind of framing of like, well, this is about including everybody. This is about making things accessible for everybody. It kind of changes your perspective on people's lived experience and how we can support them, I guess.
And just where we're definitely on this topic, I wanted to give a big shout out to Sightless Combat, who I know has been a big ambassador for pushing what we do there and working closely with yourself, Xander, and Topher. I know he reaches out, and we're doing some shows and stuff on Sea of Thieves television soon with him, so it'd be really, it's really cool to see him like really getting involved in what we do and helping that development process. And I think just hearing you folks talk about the accessibility options we have here, is seeing that then like we're learning now as a studio on Sea of Thieves, but you can also apply that to anything we do in the future. Obviously, Sea of Thieves is one game, but any future games we work on as well, that those same learnings, a lot of them can then apply moving forward. So it's really cool to see that we're learning, but not just for Sea of Thieves.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think the way you put that, Xander, the journey of understanding, I mean, that is in action now. I know for a fact that when we were designing sharks and implementing sharks, we weren't thinking about the accessibility needs of sharks at all. We were going completely to delivering the best shark experience in Sea of Thieves from our own viewpoint. But now, whenever we design new features, because that knowledge is in the team, all of this is considered at the right point in development, which is essentially right from the start. So you actually design with our latest knowledge and understanding in mind, which is kind of putting it into action. But there's kind of no end to that, right? We're always learning, and it applies to any future features and games that we make.
Absolutely, yeah. And if it's rolled into the thinking like straight from the off, then there is no gap between someone's capability and the experience, right? Like we can always build a bridge across that gap, or we can put a sign up saying there's a gap here, you know. But if we're rolling it into our design processes and our solutionizing around how we're going to engineer things, if it's that awareness and that unconscious bias is exposed and interrogated, and we have empathy and understanding at that early point in time, it just makes for a far richer experience and a far more accessible experience. And that's what we want everyone to play.
Sweet. That was I think a nice way to round it up there for accessibility. And then we're going to probably hand this bit over to, so Adam, I know there's a bunch of stuff that always goes out in our social media when we're like hyping up the latest, whether it's the latest book or a new vinyl or whatever we're doing there out in terms of merch. But you don't often get in front of camera here for us, Adam. So we need to put like the face to the prop as such.
Prop.
Face to the prop.
Are we still talking about
a better word for that? The face to the merch.
I'm pretty sure there probably was one, John.
There definitely was one, and that wasn't it. But yeah, the face to the talent. So run us through what you do from a high level, just so that people know what you do, what your job is.
So it's head of brand and licensing, but that's kind of a bit of an opaque title, really. So I'd say day to day is a combination of like working with our partners at Xbox, across all the other studios, whether it be marketing, like PR, obviously all the different teams within Rare as well. So I work an awful lot with Christina and yourself, John, and also with Mike and Joe and everyone else. But then there's like the big kind of chunk of licensing stuff, which is what I think you were kind of more erring towards. So it's interesting because we're not a licensing company, obviously. We make games, and so licensing isn't our thing. So it never really was something we did. And I'd say we probably started looking into licensing as a thing around about the time Rare Replay came out. That was the first time we really dabbled in, well, what could we do that adds a bit extra to the release of the game? And that kind of led us down to finding a partner in IM8-bit who could do some really cool like limited edition vinyls and art prints, but that was about as far as it went. But then for Sea of Thieves, I think we kind of understood that in our heads, even before launch, Sea of Thieves was going to be huge. And so we were like, well, the things that we love, we want all this kind of stuff to buy into it as well. So if you're a massive fan, you want other touch points to a franchise or for a game or to a TV show or whatever it is. And so we wanted to do the same for Sea of Thieves. And so right from day one, we kind of went at it as if we were already Star Wars, effectively. And so we went out and we talked to all these different companies, and whether that was books or comics or games or toys, and we just tried to come out the gates with this kind of huge range of stuff. So on a day-to-day, we'll be talking to like a dozen or so different partners at any given time, whether that's people coming to us and saying we want to make this, and we'll assess everything. And we have this quite rigorous kind of internal review process where we decide, is this company or this partner the right fit for us? Does this kind of service people? Because we don't want to just rip people off and just put out 10,000 things and people feel like they have to go and buy everything just because they love Sea of Thieves. So we kind of review everything in that way. And then there's all of the different stages of getting a product from that initial pitch through to it actually coming out. That's licensing, at least from our perspective. There's a lot of other bits in there, but it's quite boring. I'm not going to go into like legal sign off and all of them.
No, take us to the legal sign-off.
The legal,
I think
yeah. I mean, that's a thrilling podcast right there.
Christina, I know there's definitely a bunch of stuff there that the community have been asking. So
Yeah,
I'll
so
pass it over to you.
if I run through, a lot of the questions from the community would be like, please, can you make this so I can buy it? I don't think that was going to be a particularly fun podcast for me. Like, what about this, a phone case for this phone? What about this for this thing? So I'll just send you a fun email in a bit. But I think one thing is, and I think we could probably, before you answer this, maybe go around the room and see what people think might be the answer. But if we try and think of what is the most popular item or items in the store we've sold, and then we can all have a guess and you can tell us how wrong we are. How would that sound?
I'm in.
Yeah. Adam knows, surely.
Well, yeah, no, he's the one who's going to tell us, so we're going to guess. Adam's not going to guess.
That makes more sense. Yeah. Just run me through what you do again, Adam. From the top. What was the middle thing? Yeah. I just thought you were a toy maker.
There's a little workshop up there with little wooden toys. Okay.
So what,
Who's
we've got
going
to
first?
guess what we think. Like, I've probably got a bit of an insight, so I'm probably going to sit out this guessing round, even though I'd like to win. But I probably know.
So just as context here, Christine, you need to set some ground rules. Is this stuff that we've sold specifically through like our own store?
Getting complicated now. Sure, yeah.
So there's also, or is it just like stuff that's sold best overall that has Sea of Thieves attached to it in some way without
Let's
leading
go
the
for that
witness?
one. Let's go for that one. Let's go broad.
Oh, well, that's...
Okay.
And is it the controller?
Yes.
Is it something?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, yes. Yeah.
Is it something?
If you take out the controller,
And the
What about
Seagate
the
hard drive.
ancient coin bundles? Like, are we counting ancient coin bundles? For surely.
This is why legal's important.
We need to set the ground rules for this one.
That's true.
so taking out the Sea of Thieves controller and the Seagate hard drive, what are the
Ancient coin.
best-selling items in this that we've sold that's merch?
So you've got to guess. So come on then, Mike, go first.
It's not t-shirts. I would say it's the small things like the coins, like Sea of Thieves coin, Reaper's coin, or the trading company coins. Like one of those. I think the small keepsakes that feel like they're from the world. That's what I would buy if I'd buy one thing.
I'm going to say it's going to be either one of two things. For me, it's going to be either Monopoly or maybe the Reaper's Pride t-shirt, because I see so many of those around.
I've just been trying to get. Yeah, I'm genuinely got it open and
Looking at the bestsellers bit.
yeah, just sorting to buy.
Where is
like,
new,
most
Xander? You
purchase.
can't say that. The slacks are new.
I'm blown away by the fact that we sell deck chairs. I didn't realise that we sold deck chairs. So I mean, I'm gonna go just because I love the fact that we've got deck chairs there. I'm gonna go with deck chairs, and I know I'm gonna be wrong, but I just love it.
You're wrong.
Fair.
But you should be right, Xander. You should be right. They should
Shouldn't
be
I?
the
Look
bestsellers.
at it.
You should.
Plunder Outpost deck chair.
Buy.
Yeah, add to basket.
Yeah, that's a basket.
And Joe,
No, I know.
you know. I would say then I agree with Mike then on the small thing, and I would have probably said coins, but maybe I would go with either the art book or the Athena plaque thing.
I'm intrigued to know what you think it is, Joe.
Sorry. So, no, but if I'm wrong, I'm going to look really stupid, aren't I?
No.
Yeah, that's the point.
Also, a really good demonstration of the confidence of an executive producer and the kind of confidence you need to kind of possess and display in all decision making. That you pretend you know everything, and it doesn't really matter if you don't.
It worked on us.
No, so I think it's coins, right? It's like the individual kind of collector coins and things that both Mike and John kind of called out.
Turns out you were right, Joe.
There you go.
You were right. So yes, the coins, and I think it's kind of to the point you said, Mike, as well. I mean, the Reaper's T-shirt, just the Rainbow Pride one, that has sold a huge amount. So you were nearly there, Christina. But the coins, and I think it's that being able to own something which feels like it's from the world, and that was so important to us. And like going back to the controller briefly, which obviously was limited edition, came out at launch, sold really well. I mean, like doing a controller for Sea of Thieves, it was so important to us early on. And we had these discussions many times with Mike that everything that we did, certainly early on in licensing, had to feel like it had fallen out of the world. So the coins are a great example of that, because they do just look like they could have come from the world. But with the controller, I mean, that was a huge challenge at the time of how do you make a Xbox controller look like it's come from the Sea of Thieves. So, we worked really closely with the hardware team over in Seattle. They came back and forth, and we had all these discussions about how would we make a Sea of Thieves controller. And we kind of landed on the notion of the kind of the undead side, and the Ferry of the Damned aspect of it, and like laser etching for barnacles and glow in the dark and semi-transparent and all these different things. And I think that's kind of why it stood out, was because it was just kind of a beautiful controller in of itself. But then if you have that Sea of Thieves attachment, it's just got all these tiny little elements to it, which just kind of help build the world, which is an odd thing to say about a controller, but I love it still.
Oh, I think it's spot on. I think the coin thing is fairly obvious when you think about our approach. I don't think we ever said this, Adam, but I think early on it was a very conscious thing to make this more than just merchandise. It's not just merchandise. Everything we do in terms of extended universe stories is canon. Every piece of item feels like it could come from the Sea of Thieves, and it just taps into that feeling that people remember of the favourite toys from childhood. Or like, why do people they love a movie or they love a game, and you want to own a piece of it, something that feels authentically from that world. And I think we've always tried to put that extra bit of love. And obviously, well done to you and your team, Adam, on delivering on that, because I think there's so many examples of that from the first Tales from the Sea of Thieves lore book, which again was approached as a journal that could have come from the world, to all the little coins. It's awesome.
It's a bit harder to kind of say monopolies from the world, but they could play that, I suppose.
Yeah, that works.
I would never be forgiven if I didn't ask this. So I'm going to put you on the spot with a question that wasn't shared with you previously. Mm-hmm. But we do get asked about the Sea of Thieves controller a lot. Is there a world where we would do one, say, for the new console?
So in terms of, so that's a good question. So in terms of hardware, so the hardware team, obviously, their lead times are massive, as you can imagine. So I remember when we were doing the Sea of Thieves controller, I think it was the E3 before we came out. So it would have been 2017 was when we kind of saw the final form factor. And that's when it had been through all of its tests, and it because they drop test the controllers like 10,000 times to make sure they don't smash and all this stuff. And so that's when we got to see the actual, this is what it's going to look like. So in terms of doing another controller, we'd never bring that one back because it was limited edition, and so we would, we honor that legal T's and C's
for a future podcast.
I'd say we'd love to do another one. It's probably what I'll say. It'd be great.
Can I ask a question, Adam, as well, that I can spring on you? Every time I see the next set of commendations that have been crafted lovingly by our resident commendation crafter, Will Overton, I love them because they have the right mix of kind of visual contrast and detail that's fantastic. And every time I see them, I want one on a T-shirt. And what I'm not asking is that we have a range of T-shirts with every single commendation in Sea of Thieves. But I'm sure there are some favourite commendations kicking around somewhere that would look stunning.
Well, between us, feels like a meeting now. Between us, Christina.
Yeah. Can we just? I'll take notes.
Community poll up. Let's find out.
I can Hunter of the Shrouded Ghost.
It will be that, won't it? Obviously, yeah.
Let's see if we can get one up by the time this podcast comes out.
You have to submit your gamer tag to actually go to the purchase screen to add it to cart.
I was going to say you have to verify that you are a Hunter of the Shrouded Ghost before you can buy the T-shirt. Can our website do that?
I reckon there's a challenge being set here somewhere, isn't there?
All right, I've got another question for you, Adam.
Okay.
So what's the brand and licensing endeavor that's taken the longest to come to fruition? And before you answer that, you can't say A Pirate's Life.
So I would say Well, there's something ongoing at the moment, which I can't talk about, which has been going on since 2016.
Tease.
Go on, Tease. You've got to come. You've got to tease it somehow.
Do I know what it is, Adam?
You know.
I think I know what it is. Yeah.
Do I know
if it is what you would know, because I probably would have giddily talked to you about it. So if it is that thing in my head that's in your head, then that would be amazing. That would be unbelievable.
So there's that, and that is by nature of things, just it takes forever, but is very much worth it and is a big deal. So it's a great thing. Things I could actually talk about, probably. I mean, the controller for one took ages, but that was like a year and a half maybe from start to finish. I'd say Monopoly actually took a long time. You know, and again, to kind of Mike's point, whilst Monopoly doesn't look like it's from the world, equally we didn't want to just logo slap a Monopoly and that be that. So we kind of worked very closely with the team at Winning Moves on Monopoly to make it as Sea of Thieves as we could. And so there's things we couldn't change. Like we wanted to change the jail to a brig. I mean, that obvious was there is like core elements of Monopoly which you cannot touch. You can't put an eye patch on the Monopoly man, but anything we could, we did. And, you know, like making sure everything matched to where the map was and it was all kind of like orientated correctly and all the, you know, the pieces were, I mean, I remember we had many meetings over what the pieces should be, Mike.
Yeah, the tokens. What? Yeah, but the pig's got 4 legs, stands up. That's why the chicken failed. Wanted the chicken. The chicken felt slightly more quintessentially Sea of Thieves, but again, those legs aren't good for load bearing. Would have fallen out. So that was an easy decision in the end. But yeah, what are the things that encapsulate the Sea of Thieves experience across a bunch of tokens? So yeah, that was a good meeting.
And books, I'd say as well, take a long time. So novels and the art book took a huge amount of time. It was a massive group effort across the studio just while we were trying to ship the game as well, to pull all of that art together, make it cohesive, you know, ensure it was an informative art book as well. So things do take a while. Sometimes I forget we've kicked stuff off and then it'll appear. And I'm like, oh, yes. Forgot about that.
Some of the book stuff is awesome as well. And I think, like, I know we've talked about this, but the chance to kind of explore different stories in the Sea of Thieves is obviously wonderful anyway, but I think it's so much more pertinent to us with Sea of Thieves being a game that's constantly evolving. Like, today is present day in the Sea of Thieves. And even though we have these short linear stories in-game through our tall tales or our ongoing narratives, we can't go back in time and explain the origins of things in-game unless we're hinting to it. So the chance to bring that to life through a comic or a novel is always fun. Like the origin comics we've done have been some of the best stuff we've done. Like tapping into the origins of the different trading companies and Pendragon's story. Like it's been a joy to work on, isn't it, Adam?
Yeah, I love doing the comics, and I think they were an interesting one because obviously our first set of comics were like you paid for them; they were just normal comics. And in fact, I think Mike, we were at a Comic-Con once where there were some lads turned up to our panel who weren't aware that Sea of Thieves was a game. So they came to the Sea of Thieves panel expecting us to talk about the comic.
Yeah, I remember.
Like Andy Preston discussing the game.
That was San Diego, I think. That was where we graduated to the bigger room.
Yes.
At Comic-Con. So it was like a great sign of, we've upgraded. People know who we are. And yeah, there's a couple. They're in the front row, aren't they, I think? This is a game? Sea of Thieves is a game.
With the Origins one, obviously, we've always done those for free. And as you say, it's just this great place to tell the backstory and also introduce new things. Like the first novel introduced characters who would come into the game. The same with the Tales book. We had things in the Tales book that hasn't necessarily even been paid off yet in game, but it's those threads are there from however many years ago. And so, yeah, I love doing all that. And I think like a similar thing with the vinyl as well. We could have just done a vinyl and just, put Robin's lovely music on it, put some beautiful artwork on it and just had, and that'd be that. But we instead decided to kind of make this canonical piece of art, if you like, that is like tells a story. Like I think you would at the time, Mike, it was like, let's try and make a tall tale that people can kind of take home and have on their shelf. And that was kind of
War of the Worlds was a big inspiration. Like, how can we tell a story through music? So spent quite a lot of time sitting down with Robin and almost going, first, what do we want the flow of the story to be? And then setting that to music. So we want to put in that skeleton ship battle music, that piece that everybody loves. Well, that's because our crew has encountered a skeleton ship on the way back to the outpost as part of this broader story. So that was just, and then thought, let's have a separate vinyl with just full of tavern songs. Like that's like the party that happens following that great adventure that they go on.
Well, we were going to initially have it fully narrated, weren't we? And but then we realised it was going to be like 12 vinyl and would cost like £500. It was like, well,
yeah, the Briggsy prequel with the Briggsy narration, all of that. Yeah.
But now you can read along instead as you listen.
The art is amazing, though. One of my favourite things about the vinyl is that there is a piece of art of a ship that has the golden hour sails on them, which is the Sot Shot sails, which is a reward for people engaged with us on social. And then that's turned up in the tavern as well. So it's so cleverly like integrated with our wider community, but also like in the game too. It's just thematically just linked all over the place rather than just, like you say, it could have been like a thing that people plonked on the shelves with a front cover and be like, cool, there's a vinyl. But it's so well interwoven into the game and the franchise in general. It's wicked. I can't wait for my copy.
Soon, hopefully.
Very soon. And then just touching on something that we've been kind of skirting around as well. So like so many of our community have enjoyed the Athena's Fortune audiobook, which was wonderful. I guess an audiobook was a new experience for us too. I think it was the first one we've done with our wonderful narrator, Toby Stevens. But, as of this morning, I was doing some research. It's still 5 stars across the board on like Audible, on Amazon, etc. And how does a project like that come about? How is it brought to life? And then like also crucially, for the Lorehounds, is there a plan for a second novel?
Well, so the audiobook was interesting because that kind of fell out of what we were just talking about. So we were originally going to do the vinyl as like a narrated thing with the music behind. Then we're like, well, we need sound effects to make it bed in better. And before we knew it, we were making basically a Radio 4 like play. And it was like, this is ridiculous. So we kind of reined back on that. But then we still liked the idea of having like some kind of spoken word piece that people could experience. And we had the novel, and we had always had this idea of using Toby Stevens for something, because obviously he'd done great work in, another pirate franchise. I don't know, am I allowed to mention it? I assume.
You're the legal expert.
You're the T's and C's. We'll sign anything.
But so obviously we'd always want him to kind of do something with us, and this just seemed like the perfect opportunity. So it was just kind of between us, and then we just kicked it off, and it was an entirely new learning process on how to do an audiobook. So it was all done during lockdown. So he was, I think, over in Vancouver and was stuck in a hotel room. And so we were linking up with him at like midnight, and he was reading the book to us over what sounded like the phone. It was a very surreal experience. And then obviously, yes, off we went and just kind of processed it, got some artwork done and put it out and hoped for the best. But we thought, I think it turned out wonderfully well. I say that, there was a lot of work went into it, and a fantastic production house we used who did all the sound effects and kind of made it sound like this lovely cohesive thing. But in terms of another novel, I don't know if I don't think we've announced it yet, but yes, we are.
Just have.
We just did, yeah.
It's being written as we speak. So, we've kind of worked on the précis, and so we know what the story is and all the various aspects to it, and it's actually being written now by Chris Alcock again, who wrote our first novel. So that should be out next year, and he's full of lore, isn't it, Mike? You can attest to that. It's
as you would expect in a written novel. It is full of lore. No, it's good. I think the story will explain background of a key character and why his name is his name in present day Sea of Thieves. So yeah, it dives into some interesting stuff and sets up some cool stuff for the future as well. So there's definitely some explanation for key elements of our lore for the first time, which is what we always try to do. Like Athena's Fortune was an opportunity to pull together a lot of lore that we'd established in the game that probably went over a lot of players' heads. That was a way to solidify it and take it in a different direction. I'm sure Chris is going to end up doing the same with the second novel, which is to explain some things that have been in the game for some time as part of an original story. But the brief for the story was very exciting. So it'd be good. I know the title for the book as well. I know the title of the book. The title of the book is, T's and C's. I saw. Is that a bead of sweat, Adam? Is that a bead of sweat? Sorry. I'll be careful. Yes. The title of the novel is already the title of something in the game.
That's a good tease.
And it's not a lavender beard.
So is
I
there
really
anyone
enjoyed
that you've
seeing
wanted to work with, Adam, or that would like to, that you've not been able to kind of get a foot in the door, get a meeting with?
So it's interesting you say that. So like early on, obviously before the game launched, like getting meetings wasn't that easy because obviously it was this unknown thing. People yeah, well that's it. And they had a rough idea of what it was, but we weren't this kind of thing that people were that aware of other than having seen a couple of trailers of it. So I'd say those early meetings were quite difficult quite often, and it was more, well, they're rare, so we believe in this project. And so some of the partners who came on early, like Titan and Fangamer and all these people, like they showed huge faith in the team that we were going to deliver what they had in their head. Things like the Tales book, that that was all written and done like months before launch, and time to come out with launch. Same with Dark Horse and the art book. Whereas now it's very easy to get meetings. In fact, it's the opposite. We're getting approached constantly by people, and there's this one company who I'm not going to say who they are, who Christina hates their stuff, and they approach. I mean, they'll know if they watch this. They'll just be like, but they must approach.
They'll see my hate tweets and we know what this is.
They must approach us like once a month, but it kind of just doesn't fit with us. It just doesn't make sense, and it trivializes what Sea of Thieves is just too much. Like, we're a game that is happy to make fun of itself, but equally this is just not a good fit for us. So there is definitely companies we've wanted to work with who we've not so far had much success with. Very few, though, I would say. I'd say pretty much everyone we want to work with, we have. But there's one company in particular I'm thinking of. And the only reason I'm not saying who it is because we do actually have a meeting with them finally in a couple of weeks' time. So I don't want to, just in case, and then be like, oh, well, they're desperate.
Nice.
Amazing. And then one other thing that obviously you're involved with, as you said at the start of your lovely introduction, was that you work with a lot of the other Xbox game studios in terms of bringing their IP to life in ours, or brand collaborations. Obviously, we're in November now, which is terrifying. But obviously, next month, Halo Infinite arrives, and this is a question that we've seen from multiple people across multiple channels. The community would like to know if they'll see the Spartan ship set again with the release of Halo Infinite later this year. Do you have anything, no matter how abstract, to offer to an answer to this question?
I think a good answer that would be lovely.
Yeah, I agree. That's lovely.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, lovely.
I don't think we'd necessarily bring back what we've already done before. I think, if we were going to do that, I think even if it's an IP we've done stuff with in the past, I think it's always nice to revisit things. So I think if we were going to do anything, we would look to revisit it rather than just release something we put out at E3 like 2 or 3 years ago. But those kind of collaborations between studios are great, like seeing Sea of Thieves in other titles, and seeing different titles come to Sea of Thieves. I think it's great. And the fact that we can actually do that in a way that's sympathetic to our world, like, to kind of, to the point of Halo, it's like, putting Space Marines in Sea of Thieves just seems like it would be an utter contradiction in terms, but it's, entirely a credit to the art team at Rare that we're able to interpret these things and bring them in the way we do. So I love doing it, and I'm all for it. And, we've done some fantastic and interesting ones with a huge variety of IP, mainly first party, but obviously we did Borderlands as well, which was third party, which was, again, a great experience.
And that came about from Randy Pitford basically just liking Sea of Thieves, right? Like, that was the initial thing, wasn't it? Yeah. So,
I think he reached out to us on Twitter. That was how it kicked off. And then, 2 years later, there's Claptrap.
Claptrap inspired? What are we allowed to say? We have to say Borderlands. I don't know. No, we are. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
I can't remember. It was fine. It's all good.
There was a couple of emails about that stuff, wasn't there? A couple.
How many times in this podcast episode will you notice the obvious cuts in between each section? Also, it's a really cool insight into what you're doing there, Adam. I think the community is always like super excited when we release new merch stuff. So now they know who to email. The email will be at the bottom of the YouTube description. If you have any ideas for what you want to send to Adam, they can go direct to his mail.
Saw some cool things. We've got some trainers coming out.
They're
They're amazing. They're really cool.
Yeah, I'll show you them tomorrow if you're in.
I'm in.
I know. Yeah,
They weren't in my size, unfortunately. Otherwise, they'd have been gone.
So for our listeners, the one really cool thing of Adam's job, obviously he works on many cool things, but his office is basically a treasure trove of goodies. So you get a lot of visitors wanting to see like the latest and greatest like prototypes or new things that we're launching. And
that's a very charitable way of describing our office, the treasure trove.
Yeah, I mean it's very like on brand with Sea of Thieves. It's a
really
mess. Yeah, no floor space. Claustrophobic.
Think if you two.
Go on.
But the best bit is when you go there, you come out with like an armful of stuff, like just to try and make some space for them to continue working in. Basically,
do you like this bottle opener, Joe? No,
Yeah.
go on.
Just lastly, then, before we go, because I know we haven't really done this in a while, although we've teased quite a bit today and announced apparently quite a bit today. So,
Have we?
yeah,
announced a book.
it's the whole book.
Yeah. I did.
And talked about a lot of things that would be lovely to do.
Would be
Yeah,
lovely.
that's lovely.
A particular set of partners that Adam doesn't want to work with.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yes.
So we are on the cusp of season 5. And I know Christina's social will have started their Sea of Tease, I think, probably by the time this comes out. If not, it'll be very close. So is there anything you want to talk about in regards to season 5 about even just like a high level, the kind of thinking that went into it?
Yeah. Shall we? That would be lovely.
Yeah.
No, I think think of season 3 and the kind of huge kind of story that we added as part of that, and the 5 tall tales, along with season 4, the Sunken Kingdom, so expanding the stage of the world and where you can have adventures. For season 5, off the back of that, very conscious decision to, I guess, it's not any one thing, it's a collection of features that really kind of embody kind of the heart of Sea of Thieves, that kind of tools, not rules approach. So a set of tools that enhance the sandbox and give you new ways to express yourself in the world. And I think what's been wonderful about that is traditionally not many games would add this kind of stuff 3 and a bit years after release, and I think it's something we're really proud of. But some of those things they're kind of on the sidelines, they're extra bits of feedback, there's nice quality of life improvements, but there's definitely some things in there that our community have talked about for a fair few years. It's been wonderful to bring to the game, like new ways to express yourself and new things that you can do in the world that can create stories between players in the sandbox. So I think on the PowerPoint slide when we were planning the season, it does have a name now, and it's not this, but it was the Tools Not Rules release. It was a selection of tools that can enrich the sandbox. So awesome to see the passion of the team delivering this, as I think it's a reminder of the early prototyping days when we'd just have these fun little novel ideas for mechanics and we'd get them into the game and it would just enhance the roleplay opportunities of being in this pirate world. So yeah, the team's had a great time building this stuff, and I'm just glad we've had the opportunity to do it. It's going to be great to get it out there. Definitely some unexpected things. And I'm sure a few people will say, a small amount of people, like, what? Why are they adding this now? It's like, because we can, we're popular, and we want to keep enhancing the type of ways you can express yourself in the sandbox. And we'd love to do more stuff like this in the future as well. So yeah, more tools, not rules stuff to enhance your experience.
Definitely a little bit of a luxury update in that way, isn't it? Like it's just like we're just adding loads of stuff that's fun for kind of no real purpose apart from that, right? Which is like, it's just to give players all these really cool tools and options, and like you say, the role play, and just we'll put it out there and see what people do with it all, right, and see how it just kind of enhances the sandbox. Yeah, it's a classic Sea of Thieves update, I think.
It is. It is. Yeah.
It very much feels like you said, Mike, the kind of prototype energy is really strong in this release, isn't it? Like there's lots of playful stuff that might be disparate, but all kind of enhances that experience in a very open way.
That's the reality, right? When you're working on features to engage players and surprise them and give them these awesome new adventures, is you kind of think about features in terms of like what's the goal it's going to create, what's the reward you're going to get off engaging with that goal and striving for that goal. And as a result of marching forward to that, we miss out on a bunch of fun little features that just, sometimes it's really hard to articulate the value to the player, but it's priceless in a way, because it enhances any adventure, any interaction between players in Sea of Thieves. So I've got no doubt that this will be a cause for much hilarity and laughing and great stories and shared videos over the Christmas period. So yeah, can't wait to get people to get their hands on it. It's definitely not one you're going to want to sit on. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think like some of the conversations that I have with folks when they're talking about the features, and you say this kind of stuff that's going in here, a lot of people probably wouldn't ask for it, but once it's in, if you were ever to say we're going to take that away, they'd be like, no, you can't take it away. It's essential. It's so much fun to use.
Yeah.
And
there's definitely a few things in there that I know our community will say, thank God they finally added that. We wanted that in there since day one. So yeah, there's a few kind of small little features that I think will be like really well received when they're announced, and there's a few other kind of unexpected things that once you get to experience them with your crew, they'll definitely be clear, and they'll definitely cause some humour on the crew.
Awesome. I think that's like a nice kind of Sea of Tease to end it on there. So yeah, I guess just to round up, thank you everybody for watching today, and thanks to all our amazing guests and talking through this stuff as always. And hopefully we get another one of these podcasts out by the end of the year, but we are really regular and we're always on. We always know exactly what date we're shipping this on, so you never know. It might happen. But yeah, if you have been listening to us and you want to go back and watch for some reason, and you're just like, I want to go back and see their faces as they're saying this stuff because I want to see Adam's face when we talk about a particular partner, then do go over to youtube.com/Sea of Thieves, and you can find us over there. And if you do want to listen to us, as I say, maybe you just want to catch up and rehear some bits again, then you go into any reputable podcast app. And remember to subscribe to these things because, as I say, they come out quite randomly. So if you want to catch them when they do come out and you miss the social post, then go and click that little ship's bell on YouTube or whatever it is on podcast apps, because I don't use that, but I'm sure it's like there's a follow button there, I'm sure. And subscribe to that. So other than that, I think that's us for today. And one last thing. If you want your question asked in the next one, SOT podcast on any of the social channels, Christina?
I think we can find it anywhere. If it's public, we can find it.
So threatening.
That sounds really sinister. It's not that sinister. Sorry. No, it's all good. Don't worry. You're safe.
And that's it for today. So we'll see you all next time. And thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much for watching. Remember, if you liked what you saw, then there's a wealth of content already on our channel and there's lots more to come. So subscribe and click that little ship's bell for all those notifications. Cheers.